This is the Note Closer Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. As always, Scott Carson here, and excited to be with you today. In this episode, I am jacked up. We travel quite a bit. We meet some amazing people. In the words of Charlie Tremendous Jones, you're going to be the same person 5 years from now, except for the books that you read and the people that you meet. And I had the good fortune last year of attending our buddy Steve Olsher's New Media Summit as an icon influence. I met a new icon there. I actually came face to face with this lady during one of the exercises, and we hit it off, and she's just an amazing individual. She has such a beautiful light about herself because she has such a passion for helping people. And the lady I'm talking about is Debra Kasowski. She's a charismatic host of the thought-provoking podcast, the Millionaire Woman Show. It's committed to enriching the leadership potential of her countless clients, essentially guiding them to go within to capitalize on their true personal power, so they can achieve the measurable success they desire in business and life. After graduating with distinction, having earned a Bachelor of Science in nursing, that's why also mom's been a nurse for years too, so we hit off that. This award-winning three-time international bestselling author, speaker, and certified executive coach, spent many years as a clinical manager excelling in leadership development before founding Debra Kasowski International, a world-class training and consulting venture focused on helping aspiring business owners and solopreneurs develop the winning success habits that transform human potential and substantial profits. She's also just announced that she's going to be a two-time TEDx talk speaker, just shared with me a few minutes ago. But we are honored and privileged to have somebody north of the border, Debra, this morning. Good morning, Debra. How's it going today?
Great. Wow. Yeah, it's hard to believe I've done all those things. No wonder I started getting up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, you have to. You've got the early bird catches the worm, and you have to get some things done. That's the thing. If you get up early, you're often a half a day ahead of your competition out there, right?
100%.
So we've got about roughly right at 50% of our audience is women. With what we do with real estate investing and entrepreneurship and stuff like that, so many of our clients are women, and listeners are women out there. And with a new year, it often brings about, hey, big goals. I'm going to do some big stuff this year. I'm going to get off my keister and actually take action. But then 2 weeks into it, like a lot of New Year's resolutions, people start finding excuses and making excuses for themselves. What's some advice you would give to our listeners in Note Nation how to kind of overcome that? How to get rocking and rolling, Deb?
Absolutely. Let's jump in. So when it comes to setting those New Year's goals, because I don't believe in resolutions, because we resolve to do something, but we don't have a plan. Mm-hmm. So when you're breaking down your goals and really making them, and you hear about it, the manageable chunks of time, manageable chunks of action that you're going to be taking. People come up with so many excuses at this time of year when they've fallen off the wagon. They, not enough time, not enough resources, this happened. The truth is, there was never a plan to make it happen. So what I want to encourage you to do, I'm going to give you some tips. One is write down a list of all the things that you think you need to do. Then look at some of the priority pieces, whether it be even running errands, to geographically map them on what day that you might go do that. So, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take that to-do list and you're actually going to block off time in your calendar. So some people refer to it as time blocking, time chunking, but this is a game changer. And don't put everything into a whole 4-hour block. I suggest to people working 20 minutes to an hour. I personally use a tool called Marinara Timer, and it's an online timer where you set the time, and it works similar to Pomodoro. But what I want to encourage you is to test it. The Pomodoro method is, 20 minutes of work, 5-minute break, 20 minutes of work, and you continue in that fashion. And after 4 segments, you're going to take a 15-minute break or longer. What I encourage people to do is find out your optimal time. Then work with that time into a block of an hour. So for me, I've learned that 45 minutes straight is a great chunk of time for me. I can just keep going without distraction for 45 minutes, but then I take a 15-minute break, whether it be to eat something, maybe throw a load of laundry if I'm working at home. But what I want to encourage you is be careful about tapping into social media during that time, because you will take yourself down a rabbit hole and you may not come back. But there's a law of Parkinson. So time expands to the amount of time given. So if I gave you 1 hour each day to work on something, let's say it's making calls. When you do that 1 hour intensely for that 1 hour of time, you're going to get more done than if you blocked it off in a 4-hour segment. Because people will find ways to make that time expand to the 4 hours, but they don't necessarily get the productive work because there's no sense of urgency behind them. So when you start blocking chunks of time in your calendar to get things done, get those big priorities. So like Brian Tracy has, eat that frog, take the most difficult thing that you're dreading to do and you feel that resistance, put it at the front of your time of your day. As soon as you knock that out of the park, then you're like, wow, I've accomplished something huge today. So when you've accomplished that, that's going to start creating that momentum. And people think that these tasks that they're doing have to be big things. They're often research, they're often email, phone calls to get things in a line. It might be designing some social media graphic or handing something, delegating something off your plate to your team. You don't have to do it all, but you do need to block off time to delegate, to do the work, and really allow for some time of creativity. What happens is, because you've moved the to-do list into the calendar, here's what happens. As entrepreneurs, people think that when we work at home or we're entrepreneurs, we have such a flexible schedule and we can take, people to appointments, we can drop off dry cleaning, we can do so many things. They think that we don't really do any work. Mm-hmm. And we don't work per se, because we're doing what we love, so we don't define it as work. So let me correct that. But what happens is, if someone phones you and you're like, hey, what's happening? They're like, hey, you want to go for lunch? You look at your calendar, and if it doesn't have anything blocked in it, you're like, hey, that's cool. There's nothing in the calendar. When am I going to meet you? But then they look at their never-ending to-do list, getting frustrated why they're not getting results. It's because we didn't take the time to make those commitments to ourselves to get things done. So then when someone calls you, be like, you know what, I have a commitment, whether it be the gym, whether it be that you're working on a proposal, then you can say, you know what, I have this time blocked off. Would this time work for you? So you're keeping those commitments to yourself just as much as you would keep a commitment to a client.
Such great stuff. Yeah, it's funny too that to those of us that work from home or have worked from home for specific hours, people have a whole different mindset. They don't think of the same, like clock in, clock out 8 hours, right? They just don't. And we often are working more than the 40-hour work week. We're working often more, but often more efficient, because we do have those quick bursts of effectivity and efficiency to get things done. But I think one of the most important things that I did a couple years ago is I cut out lunch appointments, because I would often find them dragging on beyond an hour, and I have to drive somewhere 15 minutes, an hour plus for lunch, and then 15 minutes back. If that person was late, and I'd have 2 hours blown in my middle of my schedule, and it could have been a 5-minute conversation on the phone or a webinar. You know what I mean? Yeah. What are you seeing today? Because you're traveling, you're speaking, you're hosting classes out there. What are you seeing some of the biggest things that are kind of are blocking people from taking this first initial steps towards something new, or maybe they're looking at leaving their job to do something entrepreneurial spirit? Are you seeing it on a consistent basis, or is it across the board some of the mind blocks or the glass ceilings that people are seeing?
Yeah. So I work with men and women, and one of the most consistent things that I have seen is basically people getting in their own way, right? They have these self-doubts, these fears. They start comparing themselves to others, wondering why they shouldn't be where another person is, not knowing the whole part of the journey. We look at one moment, we see it as a defining moment, and we think, wow, why isn't it happening for me? This is what I believe, is that there are different people that come into your life. They're all teachers or messengers of some kind. And no one you come across like Scott, you and I, it's no accident that we met at Steve Olsher's event, right? So we got to pay attention to the messengers that show up in our lives. What are they contributing? What is their purpose? What is the gift in why someone shows up? So when we start comparing to those people that have been gifts or messengers, we devalue ourselves. And then we start looking for external validation from people for approval, self-acceptance, wondering if we're worthy enough. Are we enough? Do we know enough? And everyone has exactly what they need. And I know people have heard that and it's almost cliched, but truly, you do have what it takes to have what you want. And if the idea came to you, it means that you are there to fulfill that idea. It means it was possible for you. And here's the reason why I say that. Not everyone has the same idea. Scott, you and I have totally different ideas that come to us on a regular basis based on our experience, based on our goals, our passions, and our dreams. So no two people will ever be alike. But what I do know is each of us carries talents, skills, and abilities to bring out to the world in this uniqueness, and knowing that you're already enough. One of the books that I've published is called Let's Be Curious. How to ask the right questions, get better answers so you can create what you want. So one of the things that I want to impress upon people, the reason I say you have everything you need, is that you need to ask the questions to get what you need. Often people say, I don't have the time. So if you implement what I've shared earlier about the to-do list going into the calendar, you can carve out time. We all have the same amount of time, but where are you putting your priorities? People will say the same thing about money. I don't have money to invest. And for your case, I don't have money to invest in real estate. When they say I can't afford, they are putting that language out there that there's a scarcity. Instead, if they look at where they're spending their money, they can very much identify what their priorities are. And all it needs to be is that's not a priority right now. Or to shift to, I want to start putting money aside so I can be an investor. I can invest in real estate. And I'm making it a priority. So then creating maybe a separate bank account and having money going every month, or a dividend fund of however you want to separate that money for investment. So, and then for resources, here's the other thing that I want to impress upon people is you were never meant to have all the resources, right?
Amen. Because you can't do it all yourself. Everybody wants to, right?
No. So we need to learn to leverage those resources. Asking for help. And this is really where people hold themselves back because they're embarrassed. What does it look like if I asked for help? And it is a strength because you know what you want and you can leverage the resources around you. You might have to rent something. You may need to borrow something. You may need to ask for some tips or advice or strategy. But being willing to ask sets you apart from everyone who's not willing to ask. And Tony Robbins has even said, and I say this to people all the time, because you can't have all the resources and you're not meant to, and you leverage, the person who is most successful is not the person with the most resources. It's the person who's the most resourceful. So knowing where to find the answers, knowing where to find the equipment, knowing where to have the event for your venue, knowing where that property is, that's the resources. So when we talk about time, money, resources, we also have relationships. So those relationships are something that you need to continue to nurture, those connections from networking events and conversations, because you want to create long-lasting relationships. They're not transactional, like a one-time when we're done. We want to be able to create relationships that are long-term, so when other opportunities come up, we can reciprocate those resources or offer people that we know who could be a solution to what someone's needing.
Such great stuff there. But that's the thing. If those that try to do it themselves, that are control freaks, they're the bottleneck in their life success. You know, they're not delegating, They're not deferring things out. They're not asking for help because they think they can do it all themselves. And I think everybody struggles with it at some point. Has there been a time that you can recall where you were struggling with something and finally you're like, aha, I need to delegate this to somebody or ask for some resourcefulness from some of my friends?
Well, one of the things I would say, probably when I first started having a newsletter, I could sit there and play around, and I love being creative, but it's not where I need to be spending my time. You need to be spending your time where the greatest strengths are. So I want to be spending my time writing. I want to be spending my time coaching individuals so that they can get to their next level. If I'm sitting behind the computer, hiding, not getting into those conversations, not making the phone calls, not going to the networking events, avoiding writing, I'm not using my strengths to their full capacity. Whereas someone else, that's their expertise. They just love doing that. That's where they feel their greatest passion. So if I'm giving it to someone else, that helps me focus on where my greatest strength is. But here's the thing that I want to encourage people. I'm not saying that you shouldn't understand how to do it. Like bookkeeping, creating the newsletter. I always like to know how to do it, kind of create a document, and if I was in a pinch or something happened to the person I delegated to, I would know how, but I also know when things go off track. Or if they need help brainstorming, I can help be the solution, but I don't have to be directly involved. So I don't think it hurts anyone to initially learn how to do something, but it doesn't mean that you need to keep it.
Right.
And let go, release that control, knowing that you know what to look for if something goes wrong. Because I know people who have delegated, but they don't know what they don't know when it comes to what could go off track. And that's where they get themselves into trouble. And they didn't know if that person really had the skill set, and they're wondering why it's not working.
That's a really good point. You need to look at it, understand it, and then be able to delegate it off. Because then if you know what you're looking at, whether it's A, it's performing as it should, or B, it's not performing, and then you got to plug and play somebody else into it, or another vendor, or it's such great advice out there. Or I hate saying advice. Everybody gives advice. Yeah. I love counsel. You're giving great counsel there.
Years ago, I had a big summit that was coming up, and it was actually around this time of year, but it was a big summit I had been preparing for. And the person I had working on it went AWOL for a week. And I was in panic. I had all the interviews done. The design for the page was still in the works. I was texting, I was emailing, I phoned, no reply for 1 week. Not even to say there was an out of office to say that they were out of the country on vacation or anything.
Is this how you were feeling?
Oh, yes, exactly. And luckily, I was friends with someone whose VA was phenomenal. I called her up immediately. I said, I don't know what to do. I'm in a panic. I need your help. And when the gentleman finally phoned me back, he's like, hey, do you want me to work on this? I'm like, we're done. There's no questions. There's no explanation. There was no contact whatsoever and no reasoning behind it to say what happened. I said, I'm glad to hear your voice. I'm glad you're okay, but I'm not okay right now. We're launching in 2 days, and nothing was done. And meanwhile, I had the VA take over, and she had everything up and running. Everything stayed on time. I was forever grateful, but I tell you, the sense of panic, that sound like he played, it was terrifying because I want to be able to deliver my best work.
Right.
And grateful for that I switched over to someone who really cared about what I was doing. Yeah,
I think we learn the most about ourselves, and our strengths come from times of weakness, of times of having to learn to delegate and stuff like that. This week popped up a reminder on a logo on an event I was putting together, talking about events being some of the most stressful things that you and I can do, right? An event that I ended up, I spent a lot of money, $25,000 in marketing and hotel events and stuff like that, and no tickets were being sold at all. And I had to cancel it. And it led to the birth of all us doing our online summits that I was able to delegate and get it easily done versus something in person. So one of the most stressful times can become a strength once you work your way through it and find a resolution to it. So bravo to you on that. It's people don't realize all that goes into what we do on a regular basis of working with people and supporting things and putting on events, right, Deborah? It's a lot of moving parts.
Yes, there are. And, to keep track of those, to have tools in place. And here's the thing is the systems that you need to have in place is to have those checklists, to have those check-ins with your team, to make sure things are rolling out. You don't want to be that person who says, well, I don't know, right? You still need to be on top of things, especially when you're the CEO of your organization, you're the CEO of your life. You want to be able to be in the know and know that when something's going off track.
Yeah, you have to be in the know. Otherwise, it can make you look really bad really fast to your audience and things like that. So, and I think we've all had ups and downs and trials and tribulations, and then we all learn more from our mistakes. What do you say? What do you say to the people that are the perfectionists out there, the control freaks that, oh my God, everything's got to be perfect? I don't want to say bridezillas, but we see that in the show thing where, that's a big emotional time, but entrepreneur zillos, I guess you could say, out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's taken me some time to learn to let go of that control of the reins. And one of the biggest things, even through my coaching program, is being able to trust and enjoy the process without attachment to the outcome. And when we talk about that, people are like, it's a hard thing. And 100%, it is hard. And it's this hard that, and I love how, and I use this example to share with people. I had an opportunity to hear the Iron Cowboy, James Lawrence, speak in an event. And he was talking about his 50 triathlons, 50 days, 50 states. And his mom had ran 5K for the first time in her life. And she's like, that was hard, but not as hard as your 50, 50, 50. But what I loved about how he reframes that is your hard is your hard. My hard is my hard. So they have an equal balance because each person is facing their own challenges. And when we realize that, we can move forward, not comparing ourselves, not feeling that lack, but being able to say, okay, look, I conquered this challenge. I've got my mindset in the place where I have now defined where I'm going, and look what I've done. And I think one of the biggest things, and this is common that I see on entrepreneurs, men and women, is we're not taking time to celebrate the wins, the small successes that create that momentum. Because often when people say that they've lost their motivation, it's because they weren't celebrating. And motivation is great, but motivation comes from seeing progress, whether it be 1 degree, 1%, but to see that the steps that you have taken are leading you in the right direction. You're having glimpses of the future that you've envisioned for yourself, and you're getting there. So if we don't stop and celebrate those little wins, like, the booking of the podcast, the receiving someone's book in the mail, or, might be a speaking engagement that you've secured. If we're not celebrating, then we're just moving on to the next thing, not knowing if something's working. So the world is giving us feedback all the time. And if we pay attention, we will see whether we're on track or off track at any given point.
That's such a great thing. You hit the nail right on the head there. We don't celebrate their victories, whether it's a new podcast recording or a new book or a chapter written in a book. I think a lot of us wait to the very end to celebrate, like, hey, you got your first step done. Now let's get some motivation and momentum going. Yeah. And it becomes easier, and then you feel better about it versus, I'm going to start something, I'm going to quit. Well, you didn't celebrate along the way. That's why it was easier to quit, right? And
that's what the thing with perfectionism is, that because we want everything so perfect, here's the things that happen. We either delay getting something done where we fit into that procrastination because it's never going to be ready. It's never going to be just perfect. So we talk ourselves out of launching. But what that truly is based on fear. We're fearful that we're going to fail. We're fearful of the uncertainty. We're fearful of success or failure. But the truth is, what we're really fearful of is whether we can handle it or not. And we have faced uncertainty many amounts of time, and we've survived because you're still here, you're listening, or you're watching this. So I know that you've been through times of uncertainty. Every morning you wake up and you're uncertain. You might have a plan, but you're still uncertain of how things will roll out. But again, the world gives us feedback and we adjust accordingly. You know, your stomach's hungry, you decide to eat. Like, all of these signals tell us whether things are working for us or not. So we're always readjusting, we're always reevaluating, and we're looking at our priorities and taking steps forward based on how we think and feel. So if you feel unsure about something, that's when that procrastination checks in, right? So we want to, how can I make certain? So this is where asking questions is a phenomenal thing to do. If I was certain, if I was more confident, what would I need to be in place to make this decision? So when we look at our confidence, or am I ready to make a change? Am I thinking about how ready? What would make me more ready? So the power of asking yourself questions helps you figure out what you need to do next.
That makes sense. What's one thing that you find yourself procrastinating today? Is there anything that sits on the board?
Well, today I was probably that I want to dive into an article and write an article for LinkedIn. And I have been thinking about the different topics, and I caught myself on social media thinking about all the different messages and then coming up with a message that came to my head so I would post. But I know when I get off this podcast, I will be banging out that article very quickly.
I had the same thing happen yesterday. I was like, oh, you know, an article for a podcast business journal. But that's the thing about social media. It can be such a time suck to absorb our productivity and give us a reason to procrastinate things, you know. What are some tips that you would recommend to people out there that are struggling with a time suck of social media?
Okay. So this is something that I really pay attention to. Your phone is able to give you stats on how much time you spend on social media. And if you turn that on, you may be alarmed. You know, some people say they stop watching TV. Like, I rarely watch television. But when I do, it's for enjoyment. We're watching a movie or a TV series. Right now, I'm kind of hooked on Jack Ryan and Mrs. Maisel. I get the odd episode. But otherwise, who has time? I don't have time to watch television. I have so many goals, so many dreams that I want to bang out. That is, if I'm sitting behind the screen, I'm not getting anything done. So pay attention to those stats. I've set a goal for myself to let that decrease, especially when you see your daily stat. It's like, oh, look how much more time I would have if I didn't go on. So during your productivity time that I said with the Marinara timer or whatever you're working on, it's really great. Put your phone on airplane mode. If you're really concerned about missing out on calls, you might have it in your voice message or even in your email threads that you check your, email at certain times of the day. But the other thing is with the phone, if you can't put it on airplane mode, put it on vibrate or put it on low, but move it to a room outside or onto a bookshelf so it's out of sight, out of mind. As soon as we see something flashing on a screen, we want to pick it up and we're like, hey, somebody needs me. That fear of missing out, want to be needed. And one of the greatest lessons that I learned is when it comes to email, for example, because we think, oh, what do people need? That's it. It's other people's agenda. So I call it OPA. First thing in the morning, don't check your email right away. You want to spend that time really priming your day, and Zig Ziglar is really known for this, of, either you want to do like the Miracle Morning or the Millionaire Mornings with Lewis Howes. And I find that getting up at 5 a.m. really carves out a very sacred time for myself. I have to have time to journal, time to read. Even on my rest day, like today's a rest day from working out, I got up, I prepared for my podcast interviews, did a little bit of social media, have the journal ready to go, gonna write that article for LinkedIn, and I'm gonna go take a singing lessons, doing something new, right? So when you have that anticipation also built in, you can make your days really exciting. That way, you're not always going to your phone and getting onto social media and getting caught into that rabbit hole. And if you do have social media that you really want to get into, give yourself, set an alarm that you have a 15-minute time frame, and you're going to discipline yourself to get off. Check it twice a day. And you also have a team, if you've delegated your social media, that you still go in and do your own personal replies. Use Hootsuite, Meet Egger, all these other tools that you don't need to be on it all the time, right? So you want to be able to leverage that time. But here's the thing that I find that people are not doing. They want to do what's most pleasurable first, right? We avoid pain, and that's part of the perfectionist part. We want to be where the fun stuff is. But if we're going to eat that frog, we're going to dive into the hardest thing that we need to do first. We don't have the luxury of just playing on the phone, playing games, or whatever it is. If you want to, really knock it out of the park and create results in your business, you need to build in a discipline and the mindset, because mindset is everything, that you're going to be the best in your industry.
Such good counsel there. You're right. All those tools. Sometimes social media is better just to, I say, post and walk away from versus sitting there and seeing all the drama and the dirty laundry that people are airing online. Because this ain't pretty these days with everything going on, especially here in the States.
Yes. Yeah, you guys have a lot of things going on down there.
Just a little bit for sure. One of the things I think that people really appreciate is, you're sharing the tools and sharing the focus of aspect of it. Can we talk a little bit about maybe the mindset that it's okay to fail a little bit? I think so many people are avoid failure or avoid taking action because they're afraid of failure. And I think we need to embrace failure a little bit better. I think we need to reward that for people that do fail, and learn more from it. You have any words on that, Debra?
100%. I love this topic. It's one of my favorites. So when people think about failure, it's that viewpoint of failure, right? And we think about failure, we think about mistakes, we think about all the wrongdoings. So I want you to reframe how you see failure. So failure is feedback. It's information. It's data. It's information telling you whether you are on track or off track. You've probably heard the phrase that the most successful people have failed the most, because they're embracing that failure. They're looking at it as information that they can do better, be better, so that they can have the lifestyle that they want, or the business that they want, or the organization that they want. So if we look at it as an opportunity to learn, when people are fearful of failure, what they're doing is they're judging themselves. But if we come from a place of curiosity and wanting to learn more about what happened, then we can start expanding our viewpoint of what's possible. And what I often share with people is one of my greatest pet peeves, especially in groups and organizations and associations, is when people say, we've done it before and it didn't work. So I want to crush that myth, because it might not have worked then. And I'll say, so when did this not work? Oh, 5 years ago. Wow. There's new people on your board with new experiences, new education. We have new technology in place. The economy is different. The environment has changed. All of these things have changed around us. Even within us, we're not the same people as 5 years ago. So then I go back and say, okay, we have all these things that have changed. The only thing that has not changed is your viewpoint, right? So what did we learn? What is it that made that event not work out the way you wanted it to? Because the reason things don't continue to work out is because you never stop to learn the lesson. Mm-hmm. So the universe or life or God, whatever your preference is reminding you that there's still a lesson to be learned. But you have new people, new resources, maybe even more money than you ever had, but you still stuck in a belief that's held 5 years ago. But what is it possible today if I learned what that lesson was before. Maybe we needed to just allot a different amount of money. Maybe there's a new technology or a new service or a new form of marketing that's come out that I wasn't there 5 years ago. Or you have someone on your team with an expertise that you are not using. So let's turn that pet peeve into being open to possibility. What is the opportunity today that I can learn from what didn't work before? So we really need to pay attention to those failures, those wrongs, because you've taken action. And that's one of the greatest rewards. Look at the feedback as a reward, not something to stay away from and avoid, because that resistance, that fear is what's truly holding you back because you think it's going to happen again. And if you continue to think in past thoughts, thinking that, oh, it happened before, it's going to happen again, what you focus on becomes your reality. So really paying attention to where your focus is. Because if I have my focus on possibility and opportunity, I'm going to see them everywhere. It's just like when you buy a car and you look around, all of a sudden everybody has the same car.
So such the truth there. And then that's a beautiful thing is we get so embarrassed by it. And when we shouldn't be embarrassed, we need to embrace it. Okay, what did I learn? What was the silver lining to every cloud that we run through so that we can prepare better for the next time we tackle it or for the next.
Instead, Scott, we can say, I went first. I did it for you.
I love that. But that's the thing. You think back to high school and college, that the professors always gave the most leniency to the person that went first because they got out there, they did it.
Yeah.
It may not have been the best one, but they at least tackled it by going first and making things happen. I think same thing goes in business. If you can be the first one to get it out there and then launch it, people are going to be a little bit more lenient with it for the most part.
Yeah. But then they see you as the leader because you went first. They're going to see you as the expert because you have the most knowledge. You've made the mistakes. So now you can teach others how not to do it and also how to do it.
Mm-hmm. That's the big thing. Definitely a big, important thing there. Now, what's a couple of things you've got planned for the rest of this new decade, the new year we've got going on? What's going on that you're really excited about here in the next few months?
Well, in March, I'm going to be doing a TED Talk. And I'm not able to release the details just yet because it's still, they're confirming a few things. So I'm really excited about that. I will be launching my Unshakable Mindset program. It'll be a 5-week program where you can learn to develop that unshakable mindset to really get you where you're at. Right now, if you go over to my website, put in your email, you'll get on our newsletter list. But what you get access to immediately is a mini course that's comprised of 3 videos and lessons about how to make habits stick. So really to take some of those goals that you've maybe put aside already or fell off the wagon. Here's the thing, goals can be set at any time of the year. It's not only at the beginning of the year, but when you need to do is starting to put in those habits, creating that discipline for yourself to make those things stick and become a part of your lifestyle. That's where we need the boost. That's where we need to really get focused in on. So if you go over to my website at www.debrakasowski.com, you can get that today and you'll see more of the events that will be coming up this year.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. Making habits stick is important. But that's the thing with the entrepreneurship or anything. The Think and Grow Rich came out with a book a few years ago called Stickability. And they interviewed a lot of people. My buddy Greg Reed, who wrote that book, spoke with a lot of people about what made them successful. And that's the thing, stickability. They just didn't say no. They didn't give in. They failed, but they kept plodding forward. They kept plodding forward to make things happen.
You need to stick with it.
Yeah, you got to stick with it. I mean, that's the biggest thing is most people, all of our experts are heroes that we see, whether it's sports or speakers or entrepreneurs. We see them at the top of the mountain. And we often think of it's a difficult climb. What we don't see is the struggle along the way.
The daily grind.
Exactly. Showing up, even on days they don't want to show up. Waking up at 5 o'clock when you don't want to wake up, right? Putting in the workout or just sitting there and getting better each day, showing up each day. 1% better is a better way than anything. And when we started our podcast and videos and stuff like that, people always seem to know, how do I get 1 million views? Forget the 1 million views. If you get 1 view, it's worthwhile, right? One person responds, one person reaches out, one person listens to whatever it is. and go from there. Now, you've got a very successful podcast as well. You want to talk a little about the podcast, Debra?
Sure. So I have a podcast. It's over 3.5 years old at the time of this interview. It's called the Millionaire Woman Show podcast. And it's about using principles of life, leadership, and business to help you live rich from the inside out. So I have people from all over the world sharing their expertise in their area, but giving tips and strategies of how they have moved through life, not just to survive, but to thrive and really step into their purpose, their passion, and just contribute fully to living all in. Whether it be, I've interviewed fitness, I've interviewed people who are, motivational speakers, published authors, but I've also interviewed people who I just see as exceptional human beings who have lessons to learn, to help people live rich from the inside out, and hearing people's definitions. Actually, I just put a post up that, if you don't define your success, you'll be living by the definition other people have for you. You'll start looking up and people pleasing and wanting to know what other people think of you and get caught up in comparing yourself to other people. And it's a total trap. It's not a game-changing place to be. But if you have a definition and really take time to know what it is you want and accept that what you want is good for you, that is all that matters. When we start worrying about what other people think, we lose a part of ourselves.
Yeah, we have to quit worrying what others think about us and realize they're not walking our shoes. That's what we talked about before. Everybody can give you advice. Yes. Advice is like an a-hole. Everybody's got one. But they walked in your shoes. They aren't they're not showing up on a daily basis. And that's why you need to seek counsel from others that have walked before you or in that process of walking versus somebody that's not. And I think that's the hardest thing, is not listening to our friends and family who love us. So they want to protect us, but they don't know what we're going through, and they're not the ones being the motivated ones to go out and take action and really kick butt.
And they don't know what's possible for you, because you have the vision, and no matter how you articulate your vision, sometimes people won't have the capacity at that time to understand it or move through change. And in my work, there's the Shasta's model of change, the stages of change. And there's a part that's pre-contemplation, that people don't see it as a problem, no reason to change, right? And then it's when they get into a contemplation stage, my tongue twisted there, contemplation stage, that they're like, you know what? Maybe I don't like this. Maybe I could change something. And then they start getting into preparation and start making those plans and moving through. And then they move into action, whereas the exciting part is to watch people move into action and make the behavioral changes that they knew, those habits, put them in place, because it is about lifestyle. It's just not a random act. It's something that you're building in, that you do regularly to make it stick. Because those people who've created that stickability are the ones who are going to succeed, because, like you said, they do it when nobody else feels like it, right? But they also continue to focus on the vision. And then they have it so much in place that becomes part of who they are, that they don't have to think about it. It's just part of who they are. They go for dinner, they don't have a taste for sugar, or they don't need the 1,000-calorie dish, or whatever it is that you're working on. Realize it becomes a part of who you are, and it becomes something you don't even think about anymore. And then you can start working on other habits and things to work
on. Great stuff. Great stuff. What's the best way for people to reach out to you to find more? Is it going to your website, DebraKasowski.com?
Yeah. So go to DebraKasowski.com. I'm on many of the social media channels, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I have my business page as well, Debra Kasowski International. I'm on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to me. You can send me an email at debra@debrakasowski.com. And I would love to hear from you, and especially hear about what nugget of information was most valuable to you on today on Scott's podcast. He's doing a phenomenal job of really integrating, I was listening to Fearless Living earlier podcast, and bringing some of the personal development tools to the real estate market, because you don't separate personal from professional. It is all part of who you are. So the more you develop yourself, the more you develop yourself professionally as well.
Amen to that. That's such, it's what we're trying to help all our people out there with the head game. Because we may have the business game down, but the head game is what runs everything, right, Debra?
100%. Mindset's everything.
Amen to that. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the Note Closer Show. Once again, everybody out there, you can check it out at DebraKasowski.com. That's Kasowski. Kasowski, spelled as it sounds. Check it out. Listen to her podcast. She does an amazing job. This woman has a huge heart and fire for really working with entrepreneurs out there, men and women both. But check out her podcast as well. So once again, guys and gals, go take some action. Take some of the counsel that Debra gave us today. You put some of those things in place. She dropped so many great nuggets on tools and actions to help you be more productive and profitable in the new year. So go out there. If you've got a big goal, you're struggling with, you're floundering with it, hey, don't be so hard on yourself. Take some action, and we'll see you all at the top, everybody. Bye.
Bye.